All right, classifying living things is lesson 2 for chapter 1. We're going to jump right in. The vocab. We have binomial nomenclature. This is a system that gives each organism a two-word scientific name. A species is a group of organisms that have similar traits and are able to produce fertile offspring. A genus is a group of similar species. A dichotomous key is a series of descriptions arranged in pairs that lead the user to the identification of unknown organisms. And a cladogram is a branch diagram that shows the relationship among organisms, including common ancestor. Classifying living things. So Carl Linnaeus is how you pronounce that name, classified organisms into two large groups called kingdoms, based on similar structures. We no longer use this, but he was the first person to separate them in this way. He used one kingdom for plants and one kingdom for animals. Here's a picture of Carl Linnaeus, naturalist who dedicated his life to the classification of plants and animals. Determining domains. The method we now use is called systematics. It uses all known evidence to classify organisms. So it uses what type of cells that the things are made of, the common ancestor. There's a lot more different criteria that it goes on than just those two, but we're not going to name all of them. Organisms are classified into one of 3 domains and then one of 6 kingdoms. The 3 domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukaryota. Scientific names. We separate living things into smaller and smaller groups until we can give them a 2-word name. The groups are, in this order, domain, kingdom. I'll make that change right now. Kingdom. Phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So the way you remember that is King Philip came over for great steak. You're just going to have to remember that domain comes before all of those. So again, here we have how it works. This is our test species down here. And if we start at the top in domain, our leopard down there is in the domain of Eukarya, in the kingdom of Animalia, the phylum of Chordata, the class Mammalia, the order Carnivora, the family Felidae, the genus Panthera, and the species is Pardus. So we go through all of this, and we break it down, and we break it down, and we break it down, and we break it down until we just get to the one type of animal that this is. So domains have the most types of animals or organisms underneath of them. Kingdoms have the second most type of organisms underneath of them. Then phylum is smaller than that. Class is smaller than that. All the way down. Scientific names. Binomial nomenclature is a system for naming organisms with a 2-word scientific name. A genus is a group of similar species, and that's the first word in the scientific name. And a species is a group of organisms that have similar traits and are able to produce fertile offspring. That's the second word in the scientific name. So, binomial means to name, and nomenclature is a long word for the system of how we name things. So here we go again. We have the kingdom up top, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. If we narrow it down, they're all in all of these things up top are in the kingdom of Animalia. And then we lose C star when we bump down to the phylum Chordata. We lose our coral snake when we go to the class of Mammalia, and then we lose our squirrel when we go to carnivore, and we lose our fox when we go to Ursidae. We lose our panda when we go to our genus Ursus, and we lose the black bear when we get to our species. So these two things are very, very closely related, but if we want to identify just the grizzly bear, right, just the grizzly bear, we need to have the Ursus, or we need to have the genus name and the species. So genus Ursus, the species name is Ursus arctos. All right, scientific names. Binomial nomenclature was developed by Linnaeus and is still used, so he still plays an important role even though we don't use his exact system. We still use his way of naming things, but we don't use his just two kingdoms. We use the binomial nomenclature for the same reason we use the metric system. It stays the same everywhere in the world. I mean, how many different names are there for a bobcat? It could be a bobcat, a mountain lion, a lynx, a puma. Depending on where you are, there's all these different names. If you go 100 miles north, it could change names 3 different times. But no matter what we do, no matter where we are, it's going to be the same. It's going to have the same scientific name. So our examples here, our polar bear is Ursus maritimus. Our chimpanzee is Pan paniscus. Our humans are Homo sapiens. Again, you need to have the genus name as the first name, and then the second name is the species name. So Ursus, Pan, and Homo are all genus names. Maritimus, paniscus, and sapiens are all species names. A scientific name, or in a scientific name, you always capitalize the genus name and either italics or underline the entire name. So here you'll see I have all the genuses capitalized, species aren't capitalized, and then the whole thing is underlined or italics. Here are beautiful examples of our polar bear and our chimpanzee, or Ursus maritimus and our Pan paniscus. Classification tools. We have 2 different types of classification tools. A dichotomous key is a series of descriptions arranged in pairs that lead the user to identification of an unknown organism, while a cladogram is a branch diagram that shows a relationship among organisms, including common ancestor. So this is a very, very short dichotomous key. You see that we have 1A and 1B. 1A says the beak is relatively long and slender. So that could be that if you find that bird, that's going to be the Curthida. If it's not that, then you go to the next part. The beak is relatively stout and heavy. If it's stout and heavy, you go to number 2. The bottom surface of the lower beak is flat and straight. If you see that, it's going to be this bird. If you don't see that, then you go to the next question. The bottom surface of the lower beak is curved. So you'd go to number 3 if that's the case. And it's just these series of splitting up species by different traits that are very, very obvious and not left to, you don't want to leave anything to chance or anything that might be interpreted different than you interpret. So here's another, this isn't an example of a dichotomous key. Again, this is our dichotomous key, but this is how we would want to split a dichotomous key up. You would have all of your animals here, and then you want to split it into 2 big groups. So here they did backbone and no backbone. And then you want to split those groups into smaller groups. So they went warm-blooded and cold-blooded. They went warm-blooded and cold-blooded, and then on the other side they split that group up into no legs and legs. And then you want to keep splitting it up until the different animals are very, very obviously found. And this is our example of a cladogram. So a cladogram has one baseline, I would probably call it the backbone of the cladogram, and then a bunch of branches coming off of it. So everything, all of these have something in common, but depending on how far you go back, you have less in common. So everything here is an animal. All of these things across the board are an animal. But when you start giving them different properties or different traits, so here they say everything below this tick mark. So when I say below, I mean this direction. Everything in this direction of the tick mark has jaws. So a perch has jaws, a salamander has jaws, lizard, pigeon, mouse, chimp. They all have jaws. The hagfish does not have jaws. The next divide here is lungs. Salamanders, lizards, pigeons, mice, and chimps all have lungs. Perch and hagfish don't. Claws or nails, salamanders don't have that. Lizards, pigeons, mice, chimps do. Then we see feathers. Our pigeons have that. Our lizards don't, though. And fur, our mice and our chimp have that, but pigeons don't. So that's how that works. The closer they are together, so a chimp is more closely related to a pigeon than it is to a lizard because it's closer to that thing.